From the very beginning of her life, Amina believed her world was safe because of one person, her father. To her, he was not just a parent, but a hero. In their small village, where everyone knew one another, her father stood tall as a man of respect. People greeted him with warm smiles and lowered their heads in admiration when he passed. Children often ran after him, hoping to catch his attention, while elders trusted his words as if they were wisdom carved into stone. Amina never questioned it. In her heart, she believed she was the luckiest girl alive. Her childhood days were filled with laughter. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, she would hear her father's deep voice reciting prayers outside their home. It became the sound of comfort, a rhythm that promised the day ahead would be safe. When he returned, he would lift her in his strong arms, twirl her around, and whisper, "My little star, you are brighter than the sun." She believed him. The villagers often said her father was the kind of man who would give his last coin to someone in need. Amina had seen it with her own eyes. Once, when a poor traveler passed through the village with torn clothes and tired eyes, her father didn't hesitate. He took off his own cloak and draped it over the man's shoulders. That moment became etched in her memory, not because of the act itself, but because of the way her father smiled afterward, as if kindness was the only wealth worth keeping. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, Amina loved to sit by his side and listen to his stories. He told her tales of brave ancestors, wise kings, and women of courage. But her favorite story was always the one where he described how he had prayed for a child like her. "I asked God to give me someone who would carry my heart into the future," he would say, touching her small hands. "And he gave me you." Those words filled her with pride. She believed she was chosen, special, a part of him in every way. Her father's reputation in the village made her feel even more secure. At festivals, when drums beat and dancers filled the night with joy, she walked beside him, her tiny hand gripping his large one. People would bow their heads respectfully, and she would beam with pride, thinking, "This is my father. He belongs to me, and I belong to him." But it wasn't just in public that his love showed. At home, he made time for her in ways many fathers did not. When she struggled to read, he sat patiently with her, guiding her finger across the words. When she fell and scraped her knee, he was the one who carried her inside and whispered, "Courage, my little star. Pain does not last forever." Her mother often smiled quietly at these moments, though Amina never noticed the heaviness in her mother's eyes. To the girl, life was simple. Her father was a good man, her protector, her role model. She dreamed of marrying someone exactly like him one day. As she grew older, this bond only deepened. At 12 years old, she helped her father in the fields, carrying small baskets of yams and maize, while he carried the heavy loads. They worked side by side, laughing at little jokes. She never doubted that he was proud of her. And whenever the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of gold, she felt safe walking home with him. His tall figure against the horizon became her symbol of security. There were nights when the wind howled fiercely, rattling the doors of their small house, but Amina never feared. She knew her father would sit awake, guarding them. He had once told her, "Even when you sleep, I am watching. Nothing will harm you while I breathe." To her young heart, those words were more powerful than any shield. Her friends sometimes teased her, saying, "You love your father too much." But Amina didn't mind. She thought they were only jealous. For what girl would not want a father like hers? By the time she became a young woman, she held an unshakable belief. Her father was not only a good man, but the very foundation of her life. She trusted him more than she trusted herself. Every lesson he taught, every smile he gave, every sacrifice he made became part of the story she carried in her heart. And so, in those early years, she never imagined, never even dreamed, that one day, her world would shatter. That the man she had loved and admired with every breath might not be who she thought he was. That her happy childhood, though real and beautiful, was built on a secret waiting to be revealed. But for now, in the golden glow of her youth, she was content. To her, her father was everything. And she was his little star. At first, the whispers were faint, like the rustling of dry leaves carried by the evening wind. Amina hardly noticed them. She was too busy living the life she thought she knew, running errands for her mother, laughing with her friends at the well, and basking in the quiet pride of being her father's daughter. But whispers have a way of growing louder when they are about you. One late afternoon, Amina was filling her clay pot at the village well when two women drew near. They spoke softly, but Amina's name slipped from their lips. "It is strange," one said, eyeing her. "She looks nothing like him." The other shushed her quickly, throwing a glance in Amina's direction. "Quiet. Do you want people to hear?" Though the words were hushed, they struck her heart like thunder. Amina turned sharply, but both women plastered smiles on their faces and greeted her warmly, as though nothing had been said. She tried to brush it off, telling herself that village gossip was as common as dust on the roads. But the sentence lingered in her ears, "She looks nothing like him." The more she tried to forget, the more it returned to her mind. Days later, as she helped her mother sell groundnuts in the marketplace, she caught two old men talking behind their stall. "He has raised her well," one said, nodding in her direction. "Yes," replied the other, "but blood will always reveal the truth in time." Her hands trembled as she poured nuts into a buyer's bag. Blood. The word echoed in her mind long after the men had gone. What did they mean? What truth were they speaking of? Soon, Amina began noticing things she had never paid attention to before. Her siblings shared her father's sharp jawline and broad nose, while she had softer features and a lighter complexion. When people praised her father for his strong gaze and deep eyes, she caught herself wondering if her own eyes, slightly lighter, more like her mother's, truly belonged to him at all. Her heart grew restless. That evening, while pounding millet beside her mother, she asked casually, "Mama, do I look more like you, or more like father?" The pestle froze in her mother's hands for a moment, then came down harder than usual. Her mother forced a smile, but her eyes darted away. "You look like yourself, Amina. That is all that matters." It was meant to comfort, but instead it deepened the wound. Why wouldn't her mother answer clearly? Why did her voice sound as if it were hiding something? The whispers did not stop. At the riverbank, children giggled while pointing in her direction, and though she could not hear their words, she felt the sting of their laughter. At the evening gatherings, when her father proudly placed his arm around her shoulders, she noticed certain villagers exchanging looks, not of admiration, but of pity. That pity burned deeper than mockery. Amina began studying her father more closely. She traced the shape of his face with her eyes, compared his smile with hers in the reflection of water, and examined the way he walked. Did she resemble him at all? Some days she convinced herself that yes, she saw the connection. Other days, doubt clawed at her until she could not breathe. One afternoon, she lingered near a group of women weaving mats under the shade of a tree. She pretended to gather firewood while keeping her ears open. "She is a sweet girl," one of them whispered, her voice low. "Yes," another answered, shaking her head. "But imagine the pain when she learns the truth." The bundle of firewood slipped from Amina's hands, startling the women. They laughed nervously and called out to her, pretending nothing was wrong. But Amina's chest felt heavy. That night, as she lay awake staring at the thatched roof, questions tumbled through her mind. If the man she called father was not truly her blood, then who was? Why had no one told her? Why did the entire village seem to know something she did not? She tried to bury her face in her mat and remind herself of the man she loved, the one who carried her on his shoulders, who wiped her tears when she fell, who prayed for her every morning. Surely that love was real, wasn't it? Surely whispers could not erase years of laughter and care. Yet the whispers clung to her like a shadow. Everywhere she went, she felt them following, half-spoken words, sideways glances, silences that carried meanings heavier than speech. And deep within her, a fear began to grow. The life she knew, the certainty she held, might not be as solid as she thought. Something was hidden. Something about her very identity. And though she did not yet know what it was, she could feel it pressing closer, like a storm gathering in the distance, unseen, but impossible to ignore. The more Amina tried to silence the whispers in her mind, the louder they grew. What once seemed like idle gossip now began to feel like hidden truth. And as doubt gnawed at her, she started to notice details she had ignored her whole life. It began one morning, when she sat with her siblings on the porch. They were laughing, teasing one another as their father prepared for the day. Her brother's wide smile caught her eye, and for the first time, she truly saw how much it resembled their father's. The same strong jaw, the same sharp teeth, even the same dimples when he laughed. Her younger sister leaned against him, and Amina saw the same nose, the same deep, dark eyes reflected like mirrors of their father's face. But when she touched her own cheek and gazed at her reflection in a bowl of water, she felt different. Her skin was a shade lighter, her nose was smaller, her eyes, though beautiful, seemed softer, unlike the rest. Her heart raced. Had she always looked this way, or was she only now seeing the truth? At first, she brushed the thought aside. Families often had variety in appearance, didn't they? Some children looked like the mother, some like the father. She tried to comfort herself with that explanation. But soon, even her mother's features seemed distant from hers. Where her mother's eyes were dark and piercing, Amina's carried an unusual lightness, almost like hazel touched by sun. She began comparing herself to her family constantly. When her siblings smiled, she searched for her own smile in theirs, but saw none of it. When her father spoke with his deep voice, she wondered why hers carried a softer tone. When they all walked together, she felt like a piece from a different puzzle forced into place. One evening, while helping prepare the family meal, her youngest brother teased her. "You must be adopted," he said with a mischievous grin. The others laughed, thinking it was harmless fun. But Amina froze, her heart pounding. Her mother quickly scolded him, too quickly. The laughter ended, but the words clung to Amina like a brand. That night, she studied her father as he sat by the fire. His profile was sharp, commanding, full of strength. She turned to her siblings beside him, each of them bore his likeness in some way. Then she touched her own face again, tracing her softer features, her different shade of skin. Tears stung her eyes as the whispers she had heard now echoed louder, "She doesn't resemble him at all, blood cannot be hidden forever." Her days became restless. She walked through the village with a heavy heart, noticing how people looked at her. Had they always stared this way? Or was it her imagination now twisting every glance into suspicion? She thought of the old women at the weaving mats, of the men near the fields, of the pity in the villagers' eyes. Were they all seeing the same thing she was now seeing in herself? At the river, she knelt beside the water and studied her reflection carefully. She pressed her hands to her face, tilted her head, and compared the image with the memory of her father's. "I am his daughter," she whispered to herself, almost like a prayer. "I am his daughter." But the more she repeated it, the less certain it felt. The reflection staring back seemed like that of a stranger. Her mother noticed the change in her. One afternoon, while they cooked together, her mother asked softly, "Why have you been so quiet lately, Amina?" Amina wanted to answer. She wanted to ask, "Am I truly his daughter? Why do I look nothing like him?" But fear held her tongue. Instead, she shook her head and said, "I'm only tired, Mama." But her mother's eyes lingered on her too long, filled with something. Was it sadness? Or guilt? Amina couldn't tell. The weight grew heavier each day. Every family meal felt like a test. Every smile from her father felt like a lie she was betraying him with, by silently doubting him. She loved him. She adored him. He had raised her with tenderness and pride. And yet, every glance in the mirror reminded her of the distance between them, a gap of blood, of truth, of something she couldn't yet name. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in colors of fire, she sat alone under the great baobab tree. She plucked at the grass and whispered her fears to the earth. "Why do I not belong? Why do I look so different? Am I truly who I think I am?" Her voice cracked, but the wind carried no answers. It was there, in that lonely moment, that Amina realized her happy childhood was cracking. 4 years, she had built her world on the certainty that she was her father's daughter. But now, the cracks widened with every whisper, every comparison, every reflection in the water. And though no one had yet spoken the truth aloud, Amina's heart already sensed it. Something about her life was not what it seemed. Something about her identity was hidden, like a secret buried beneath the soil of her own home. The strange resemblance she lacked was not just in her mind. It was real. And it was pulling her closer, step by step, to the truth that would one day change everything. One rainy afternoon, Amina sat alone in the house while her mother fetched water from the stream. The heavy clouds pressed low, and the sound of rain drummed steadily against the thatched roof. She moved about the room, tidying up, when her foot brushed against a small wooden chest tucked beneath her mother's sleeping mat. The chest was familiar. Her mother kept important things there, wrappers for special occasions, beads for ceremonies, and sometimes a few coins carefully saved. But as Amina adjusted it, the lid shifted slightly, and something slipped out, a folded piece of parchment, yellowed with age. Curiosity tugged at her. She picked it up. The paper was brittle, the edges frayed, as if it had been read many times and hidden again. At first, she thought it was just another market list or an old prayer, but then she noticed the writing. The ink had faded, but the words were still clear. She hesitated. It felt wrong to pry into something her mother had hidden. Yet the whispers in the village, the pitying looks, the doubts that haunted her reflection, all of them pushed her forward. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the letter. The first line stole her breath. "My dearest Amina." She blinked. Her name. But the handwriting was not her father's. She had seen his strong, deliberate script many times. This writing was softer, more flowing, and unfamiliar. Her eyes darted over the words. "Though I cannot be with you, know that you are born of my blood. Your mother has chosen another path for your safety, but never doubt that you carry me within you. I will always watch from afar. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Born of my blood? Chosen another path? The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She read the letter again and again, each time feeling the ground beneath her slip further away. It was signed with a name she did not recognize. Not her father's. Someone else's. The room seemed to spin. She pressed the paper to her chest, struggling to breathe. The whispers, the strange looks, her mother's evasive answers, all of them suddenly made sense. The truth she had feared was now written before her in ink. The man she had called father her whole life was not her true parent. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to tear the letter apart and pretend she had never seen it. But her trembling fingers refused. Instead, she clutched it tighter, as though it were the missing piece of herself she had been searching for all along. Her mother's footsteps approached, splashing through the puddles outside. Panicked, Amina shoved the letter back into the chest and slid it under the mat. She quickly sat down, pretending to weave a small basket. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared her mother would hear it. When her mother entered, dripping from the rain, her eyes flicked toward Amina, sharp, searching, as though she could sense something had changed in the room. Amina kept her head down, her fingers fumbling over the basket reeds. That night, Amina lay awake, the words of the letter echoing in her mind. Born of my blood, chosen another path. She turned the phrases over and over, trying to squeeze meaning out of them. Who was the man who wrote this? Why had her mother hidden it? And most of all, why had she been kept in the dark all these years? She thought of her father. No, the man she had believed to be her father. His strong arms, his stories, his blessings, his laughter. Had it all been a lie? Or had he known she was not truly his? The thought twisted painfully in her chest. If he knew, then his love had been greater than she could comprehend. If he didn't know, then her entire family was living inside a carefully crafted secret. The following days were torture. Every glance at her father felt heavier, as though he could see the letter's words shining in her eyes. Every smile from him brought guilt, because while he lived in certainty, she lived with knowledge she was not supposed to have. She wanted to ask her mother about it, but fear bound her tongue. Her mother's eyes already carried too much weariness, too much silence. Would asking bring anger? Or worse, tears? Instead, Amina carried the secret inside her, hidden like the letter itself. But the more she tried to bury it, the more it gnawed at her. She could no longer laugh freely with her siblings. She could no longer look into her father's face without seeing the shadow of another man's name. At the riverbank one evening, she sat alone, clutching a small stone in her hand. She thought about throwing it into the water, about pretending the letter had never existed. But even if she threw the stone, even if she tore the paper, the truth would remain. It was now part of her. And deep in her heart, one certainty grew: she could not live forever in silence. Sooner or later, she would have to confront her mother. She would have to demand the truth, no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much it changed everything. The forgotten letter had opened a door that could never be closed again. The day Amina finally confronted her mother, the air was heavy, as though even the earth knew secrets were about to surface. She had carried the weight of the letter for weeks, her chest tight with questions, her heart bruised by silence. That evening, when the sun dipped low and her father had gone to visit a neighbor, she could no longer hold back. Her mother was sorting beans into a clay bowl when Amina sat across from her. Her hands trembled, but her voice was firm. "Mama," she whispered, "I found the letter." The bowl slipped from her mother's lap, beans scattering across the floor like tiny beads of truth spilling everywhere. Her mother's face went pale. For a long moment, she said nothing, only stared at Amina with eyes full of fear and sorrow. "You were never meant to see that," her mother said at last, her voice breaking. Amina's throat tightened. "Then it is true? The man I call father, he is not my blood." Tears welled in her mother's eyes, and she covered her face with her hands. For a long while, she wept softly, rocking back and forth, as if every sob loosened a secret she had carried for years. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "Yes, Amina. It is true." The words cut sharper than any blade. Amina's breath came in gasps. She felt as though her world had tilted, throwing her off balance. "But who is he, Mama? Who is my real father?" Her mother hesitated. Pain clouded her features, as though speaking his name would reopen wounds long buried. Finally, she whispered, "He was a traveler. A man who came through this village many years ago. His name was Malik." Amina frowned. She had never heard that name before. Her mother's voice softened as she continued. "He was not from here. He came with a group of merchants, passing through with their goods. He was gentle, kind, and different from the others. I was young, and my heart was foolish. For a short while, he stayed in the village. And in that time, we loved each other. Amina's eyes widened. She had always seen her mother as strong, quiet, devoted. The thought of her as a young woman in love with a stranger felt unreal. Why did he leave? Amina asked, her voice shaking. Her mother's lips quivered. Because he could not stay. He was bound to his caravan, to a life of movement. He promised he would return, but he never did. I later learned he died on one of his journeys. Amina felt her chest tighten. So my father, the man I believed in, knew all this time. Her mother shook her head, tears falling freely now. No. He does not know. He believed you were his, and I let him believe it. I thought it was best, for you, for him, for all of us. Malik was gone, and your father, the man you call father, he gave you love without question. I could not bear to destroy that. The words tumbled into Amina's ears like stones. She wanted to scream, to cry, to deny it. But part of her, the part that had always felt different, that had always wondered why she looked unlike her siblings, knew the truth was undeniable. She sat in silence, staring at her mother. Her heart swelled with anger, sadness, and confusion. Anger that her life had been built on a secret. Sadness for the love her mother had lost. And confusion about who she was now. A traveler. Her real father had been a traveler, a man of the road, who carried goods and stories across distant lands. Not a respected elder of the village, not a man rooted in tradition, but someone fleeting, passing, almost like the wind. So I do not belong here, she whispered bitterly. I am the child of a stranger. Her mother reached out quickly, clutching her hands. No, Amina. You belong here more than anyone. Blood may come from Malik, but love has come from this home. The man who raised you has given you his heart, his name, his protection. That is also fatherhood. But Amina's tears spilled over. Why didn't you tell me, Mama? Why let me believe a lie for so long? Her mother broke again, her voice raw. Because I was afraid. Afraid you would hate me. Afraid you would hate yourself. I wanted you to grow strong, proud, unbroken. If I had told you when you were young, you would have carried this burden too early. Forgive me, my child. I thought I was protecting you. Silence filled the room, broken only by their sobs. For the first time in her life, Amina felt both closer to her mother and farther away. She understood the sacrifice, the fear, the pain her mother had carried. Yet she also felt betrayed by years of half-truths. That night, as the stars glittered in the sky, Amina lay awake, staring into the darkness. The image of Malik, her true father, formed in her mind, a man she had never seen, yet whose blood flowed in her veins. She imagined him walking with the caravan, laughing with strangers, carrying treasures across lands she could only dream of. She imagined his eyes, were they like hers? Was her light complexion a gift from him? Was her soft voice his echo? The thought filled her with both wonder and grief. Wonder at the part of herself she had never known, grief at the fact she would never meet him. The man she had called father still slept in the next room, unaware of the storm raging in her heart. She loved him still, but now she carried a truth that could never be undone. Her real father was not the man she adored, but a traveler who had once passed through her mother's life like a fleeting shadow. And though she had never met him, Malik's absence was now the loudest presence in her world. The morning after her mother's confession, Amina awoke with swollen eyes and a heart that felt like it had been cracked open. The sounds of the village, the bleating goats, the laughter of children chasing each other through the dust, the pounding of women's pestles against grain, were the same as they had always been. Yet to her, the world had shifted. She lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece herself back together. But nothing felt steady. Not her breath, not her thoughts, not even her name. Amina, the daughter of Malik, the stranger. The daughter of a lie. When her siblings greeted her cheerfully that morning, she forced a smile, but their familiar faces struck her like blows. Their noses, their eyes, their skin, each resembled their father in small, obvious ways. And she, standing among them, was the odd one out, the puzzle piece that never fit. 4 years she had brushed off the differences. Now they screamed at her, undeniable and sharp. As the day wore on, Amina's emotions tore her apart from the inside. One moment, she felt a fiery anger rise in her chest. How dare her mother keep this from her? How dare she weave lies into the fabric of their family? Another moment, sorrow engulfed her, heavy and suffocating. She was not who she thought she was. The father she adored, whose approval she craved, was not truly hers by blood. And then confusion crashed in, twisting her thoughts. If the man who raised her wasn't her real father, did that make his love less true? Or was she still his daughter in every way that mattered? The questions circled endlessly, leaving her exhausted but restless. She wandered out of the compound, her feet carrying her aimlessly along the paths between huts and fields. People greeted her warmly, as they always did, "Amina, daughter of our elder." But each word pierced her like a thorn. Daughter of our elder. The title now felt stolen, borrowed, undeserved. She stopped by the riverbank, where the water gurgled and caught the afternoon light. Sitting on a rock, she stared at her reflection in the rippling surface. The girl who stared back at her looked familiar and foreign all at once. She touched her face, her hair, her skin. Was Malik's blood written in her eyes? Was the reason she had always felt slightly different now clear, undeniable? A lump rose in her throat. She whispered aloud, her voice breaking, "Who am I?" Her reflection had no answer. That night, when her supposed father returned from a long day with the elders, Amina could barely look at him. He smiled at her warmly, asked if she had eaten, and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. It should have comforted her. Once, it would have. But now, the touch made her ache. He loved her. She knew he did. Yet every word of affection felt tangled with lies. Guilt gnawed at her as well. She wanted to tell him. To scream the truth. To confess that his wife had deceived him, that his beloved daughter was not his own flesh. But she could not. The thought of shattering his world as hers had been shattered was unbearable. So she kept silent, locking the truth deep inside, even as it threatened to consume her. Days turned into weeks, and the storm in Amina's heart only grew. She avoided her mother, unable to forgive, yet unable to sever the bond of love between them. She kept her distance from her father, too, though each time she did, his puzzled frown broke her heart further. She could not tell him why she had grown so cold, she could not explain the invisible wall that now stood between them. At night, sleep abandoned her. She lay awake, replaying her mother's words over and over, trying to make sense of it all. Sometimes she imagined Malik, her real father. What would life have been if he had stayed? Would she have been proud to carry his name, to inherit his life of travel and freedom? Or would he have abandoned her as he abandoned the village? Other times, she imagined the man she had always called father learning the truth. She saw the hurt in his eyes, the betrayal in his face, the collapse of everything he believed. And then she wept silently into her mat, suffocated by guilt, fear, and love all at once. Her world had become a web of contradictions. She hated her mother for the lie, but she pitied her too. She doubted her father's claim to her, yet she longed for his embrace. She yearned to know Malik, but resented him for leaving. And above all, she felt the crushing weight of not belonging, not fully here, not fully anywhere. The once confident girl who walked through the village with a smile was gone. In her place was a shadow, torn between two fathers, two truths, and two selves. Her shattered identity bled into everything she did. She snapped at her siblings, avoided her friends, and even struggled with her chores. Every task felt meaningless when she no longer knew who she was. One evening, unable to contain her turmoil, Amina climbed the hill that overlooked the village. The fields stretched before her, the huts glowing warmly in the setting sun. From above, it all looked peaceful, timeless. But inside her, war raged. She sank to her knees, pressed her face into her hands, and sobbed. Her cries carried into the wind, swallowed by the vastness of the sky. "Am I a daughter of this home? Or just a stranger who was taken in?" she whispered to the emptiness. The silence that answered her was deafening. And for the first time in her life, Amina felt utterly alone. For weeks, Amina carried the weight of her secret like a stone bound to her chest. It dragged her down in every moment, whispered in her ear when she tried to sleep, and gnawed at her when she worked in the fields. She could not go on like this, half alive, half broken. One evening, after another tense silence at dinner, she made up her mind. She needed answers. The truth was no longer a shadow she could run from. If Malik was her real father, she had to know who he was beyond the scraps of memory and rumor. She had to see his face, hear his voice, and decide for herself what kind of man had given her life. Her first step was her mother. Though anger still coiled inside her, Amina understood that her mother was the key to unlocking the past. So one night, she entered her mother's hut, carrying only a small lantern. Her mother looked up, startled by her sudden presence. "Amina," she said softly. "What troubles you?" Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out. "Tell me about him. Tell me about Malik." For a long time, her mother said nothing. She stared at the ground, her hands twisting in her lap. Finally, she whispered, "He was a man unlike the others here. A traveler, yes, but gentle. He made me laugh. He saw me when no one else did. But he was never meant to stay." The words painted a faint sketch of a man, but they weren't enough. "Where is he now?" Amina pressed. "Is he alive?" Her mother's eyes glistened with tears. "Last I heard, he had gone north. To the trading towns. But it has been many years." That was all Amina needed to hear. A direction. A place to begin. The next morning, while the village stirred awake, Amina slipped away with only a bundle of clothes, a water gourd, and a piece of bread. Her heart pounded, not just from fear of leaving but from the determination that pushed her forward. Each step away from the only home she had ever known felt like stepping into a new version of herself, unsteady, but resolute. The road north was long and dusty. She walked for hours beneath the blazing sun, her sandals raising small clouds of dirt. Along the way, she replayed every story she had overheard about Malik. Some said he was a trader of fine goods, others whispered he was a wanderer who left broken hearts behind him. Which version was true? And where in those tales did her own existence fit? At a neighboring village, she paused to rest. Sitting under a tree, she overheard two old men discussing a stranger who once passed through years ago. Her pulse quickened when they mentioned the name Malik. She moved closer, pretending to adjust her sandal. "Ah yes, the tall one with sharp eyes," one of them said. "Carried goods from the coast. He stayed a season, then vanished." Amina interrupted timidly. "Do you know where he went?" The men regarded her with curiosity. One shrugged. "He spoke of the northern markets. If he still lives, you may find him there." Encouraged, Amina pressed on. Each village brought scraps of information, like pieces of a puzzle. In one place, a woman recalled his charming smile. In another, a merchant swore he had bartered with him years before. The trail was faint, blurred by time, but it existed. At night, she lay under the stars, her bundle for a pillow. Loneliness crept in then, whispering that she was foolish to chase a ghost. But each time doubt threatened to swallow her, she touched the small necklace her mother had given her, a keepsake Malik once gifted. It was the only piece of him she had, and it fueled her resolve. Days turned into weeks. Her feet blistered, her body ached, but her spirit refused to give up. With every step, she told herself, "I am not just a secret. I am not just a lie. I deserve to know where I came from." Finally, she reached the edge of a bustling trading town. The air was thick with the scent of spices and roasted meats. Traders shouted their wares, camels groaned under heavy loads, and people of every kind bustled past. Amina stood at the entrance, wide-eyed. Somewhere in this chaos might be the man whose blood flowed in her veins. She began to ask questions cautiously, describing Malik as best she could. Some shook their heads, others shrugged, but one young trader's eyes lit up. "Yes," he said. "I know him. Or I knew him. He comes and goes, but it has been some months since he was here." Amina's heart leapt. He was real. He was alive. The trader pointed her toward a caravan leader who often traveled with Malik. That night, as she prepared to seek him out, she lay awake beneath the foreign stars of the trading town, her mind racing. What would she say when she finally saw him? Would she call him father? Would he even acknowledge her? Or worse, would he deny her, just as he had denied her mother all those years ago? The answers were close now, she could feel it. But so was the danger of being shattered all over again. As sleep finally claimed her, Amina clutched the necklace tight and whispered, "I must know. No matter the cost, I must know." The trading town felt like another world compared to the quiet of Amina's village. Every morning, the streets came alive with clashing voices, the clang of metal, the bleating of animals, and the vibrant colors of fabrics from distant lands. Yet for Amina, all the noise and beauty blurred into the background. Her heart was fixed on one goal, finding Malik. After days of asking questions, she was finally directed to a caravan leader who had known him. The man was broad-shouldered, his beard streaked with gray, and his eyes shrewd but not unkind. When she approached him, her voice trembled. "Sir, do you know a man named Malik? A trader, perhaps in your company?" The caravan leader studied her carefully. "Malik, yes, I know him. Why do you ask?" Amina swallowed hard. He might be my father." The man raised his brows but nodded slowly. "Then you should know, he is here. He returned just yesterday with the caravan." The world seemed to tilt beneath Amina's feet. He was here. Not a rumor, not a fading trail, he was real, alive, and within reach. The leader gave her directions to a small inn on the edge of the market. Her steps felt heavy as she walked, as though every moment carried the weight of years of secrets. At the door, she hesitated, her hand hovering over the wooden frame. What if he rejected her? What if he denied her? Still, she pushed forward. She entered. Inside, a man sat by the window, his posture relaxed yet weary, as though he had traveled many miles. His hair was streaked with silver now, his face lined, but his eyes, sharp, restless eyes, seemed unchanged by time. Amina's breath caught. Something in those eyes mirrored her own. She stepped closer, her voice breaking. Malik. He looked up, surprised. Yes? Do I know you? Her throat tightened. I think you are my father. The words hung in the air, heavy and trembling. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the murmur of the market outside. Malik's eyes widened. He set his cup down slowly. What did you say? Amina's hands shook, but she held his gaze. My name is Amina. My mother is Samia, from the southern village. She told me the truth. That you are the man who gave me life. Recognition flickered across his face. He leaned back, covering his mouth with a trembling hand. Samia, my Samia. His voice cracked with emotion. Then, you are her daughter. Yes, Amina whispered. Her daughter. Your daughter. Tears welled in Malik's eyes. He rose slowly, almost cautiously, as though afraid she might vanish if he moved too fast. When he reached her, his hands hovered before finally resting gently on her shoulders. I never knew, he said, his voice breaking. She never told me. Amina's heart twisted. She said you were never meant to stay. That you would not have wanted to. Malik shook his head fiercely. No. I wanted to stay, but I was young and bound to the caravan. When I left, I promised I would return. But when I came back seasons later, they told me Samia had married another. They said she was lost to me. I believed them. I had no idea she carried my child. Amina's tears spilled freely. All these years, I thought another man was my father. I loved him, respected him, but he was not my blood. Do you know what it feels like to learn your whole life was built on a lie? Malik's face crumpled. He pulled her into a trembling embrace. I am sorry, Amina. So sorry. I cannot undo the past. But I never stopped thinking of Samia. If I had known of you, I would have fought to stay. The embrace brought warmth, but it also carried sharp edges of pain. Joy surged through her at finding him, yet grief clawed at her for all the years lost. She pressed her face into his shoulder, letting the storm of emotions pour out. When they finally sat, Malik told her more. He spoke of his journeys, of the markets and deserts, of a life spent chasing trade routes and opportunities. Yet beneath it all was regret, regret that he had let love slip away, regret that he had not known his daughter existed. You have my eyes, he said softly, studying her face. And my stubborn chin. How could I have not known? Amina laughed through her tears, but the pain lingered. Why did mother never tell you? Why keep me hidden? Malik sighed deeply. Perhaps she wished to protect you. Perhaps she thought another man would give you a more stable life than a wandering trader ever could. If so, she acted from love, even if it cost us both. The answer soothed and wounded her all at once. It explained her mother's silence, but it also left a scar of longing for what might have been. As the sun set outside the window, father and daughter sat together for the first time. The room was filled with both peace and sorrow, with discovery and loss. Amina knew this moment would not heal everything. The truth had come too late to erase years of confusion and hurt. But still, it was a beginning. That night, as she lay in the inn beside the man who had given her life, Amina felt both broken and whole. She had found her real father. She had heard his truth. And though the journey ahead would not be easy, she no longer walked in shadows. She finally knew who she was. The trading town felt like another world compared to the quiet of Amina's village. Every morning, the streets came alive with clashing voices, the clang of metal, the bleating of animals, and the vibrant colors of fabrics from distant lands. Yet for Amina, all the noise and beauty blurred into the background. Her heart was fixed on one goal, finding Malik. After days of asking questions, she was finally directed to a caravan leader who had known him. The man was broad-shouldered, his beard streaked with gray, and his eyes shrewd but not unkind. When she approached him, her voice trembled. Sir, do you know a man named Malik? A trader, perhaps in your company? The caravan leader studied her carefully. Malik, yes, I know him. Why do you ask? Amina swallowed hard. He might be my father. The man raised his brows but nodded slowly. Then you should know, he is here. He returned just yesterday with the caravan. The world seemed to tilt beneath Amina's feet. He was here. Not a rumor, not a fading trail, he was real, alive, and within reach. The leader gave her directions to a small inn on the edge of the market. Her steps felt heavy as she walked, as though every moment carried the weight of years of secrets. At the door, she hesitated, her hand hovering over the wooden frame. What if he rejected her? What if he denied her? Still, she pushed forward. She entered. Inside, a man sat by the window, his posture relaxed yet weary, as though he had traveled many miles. His hair was streaked with silver now, his face lined, but his eyes, sharp, restless eyes, seemed unchanged by time. Amina's breath caught. Something in those eyes mirrored her own. She stepped closer, her voice breaking. Malik. He looked up, surprised. Yes? Do I know you? Her throat tightened. I think you are my father. The words hung in the air, heavy and trembling. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the murmur of the market outside. Malik's eyes widened. He set his cup down slowly. What did you say? Amina's hands shook, but she held his gaze. My name is Amina. My mother is Samia, from the southern village. She told me the truth. That you are the man who gave me life. Recognition flickered across his face. He leaned back, covering his mouth with a trembling hand. Samia, my Samia. His voice cracked with emotion. Then, you are her daughter. Yes, Amina whispered. Her daughter. Your daughter. Tears welled in Malik's eyes. He rose slowly, almost cautiously, as though afraid she might vanish if he moved too fast. When he reached her, his hands hovered before finally resting gently on her shoulders. I never knew, he said, his voice breaking. She never told me. Amina's heart twisted. She said you were never meant to stay. That you would not have wanted to. Malik shook his head fiercely. No. I wanted to stay, but I was young and bound to the caravan. When I left, I promised I would return. But when I came back seasons later, they told me Samia had married another. They said she was lost to me. I believed them. I had no idea she carried my child. Amina's tears spilled freely. All these years, I thought another man was my father. I loved him, respected him, but he was not my blood. Do you know what it feels like to learn your whole life was built on a lie? Malik's face crumpled. He pulled her into a trembling embrace. I am sorry, Amina. So sorry. I cannot undo the past. But I never stopped thinking of Samia. If I had known of you, I would have fought to stay. The embrace brought warmth, but it also carried sharp edges of pain. Joy surged through her at finding him, yet grief clawed at her for all the years lost. She pressed her face into his shoulder, letting the storm of emotions pour out. When they finally sat, Malik told her more. He spoke of his journeys, of the markets and deserts, of a life spent chasing trade routes and opportunities. Yet beneath it all was regret, regret that he had let love slip away, regret that he had not known his daughter existed. You have my eyes, he said softly, studying her face. And my stubborn chin. How could I have not known? Amina laughed through her tears, but the pain lingered. Why did mother never tell you? Why keep me hidden? Malik sighed deeply. Perhaps she wished to protect you. Perhaps she thought another man would give you a more stable life than a wandering trader ever could. If so, she acted from love, even if it cost us both. The answer soothed and wounded her all at once. It explained her mother's silence, but it also left a scar of longing for what might have been. As the sun set outside the window, father and daughter sat together for the first time. The room was filled with both peace and sorrow, with discovery and loss. Amina knew this moment would not heal everything. The truth had come too late to erase years of confusion and hurt. But still, it was a beginning. That night, as she lay in the inn beside the man who had given her life, Amina felt both broken and whole. She had found her real father. She had heard his truth. And though the journey ahead would not be easy, she no longer walked in shadows. She finally knew who she was. The weeks after meeting Malik felt like stepping into a new life. At first, Amina was overwhelmed, her heart torn between two men, the father who had raised her with steady kindness, and the father whose blood ran in her veins but had been absent from her childhood. The conflict raged within her. Some nights she lay awake wondering if she even belonged anywhere at all. But slowly, clarity began to take root. Back in her village, whispers still followed her. Some people were curious, some judgmental, and others pitying. Yet Amina found she no longer shrank under their stares. For the first time, she walked the village paths with her head held high. She had faced the truth, endured the storm of betrayal and grief, and she had survived. Her mother, Samia, grew quieter in those days. She often sat weaving mats by the fire, her hands working but her eyes distant. Amina sometimes caught her mother watching her, sadness and love mixed together. One evening, Amina sat beside her. "Mother," she said softly, "I know why you did it. I know you wanted me to have stability, a father who would never leave. And I had that. I will always be grateful." Tears filled Samia's eyes. "I feared the truth would only hurt you. Perhaps I was wrong. But I loved you with everything in me." "I know," Amina whispered, taking her hand. "And I love you too." That night, something heavy lifted between them. The silence that had once felt like a wall was replaced with a quiet understanding. In the days that followed, Amina visited Malik again. He was eager, perhaps too eager, to make up for lost time. He told her stories of the deserts, the caravans, and the distant coasts he had seen. He brought her small gifts, a necklace of shells, a cloth dyed with deep blue, little tokens of a life lived far away. She treasured the gestures, but she also knew these trinkets could not erase the years he had missed. And she told him so. "Malik," she said gently one afternoon as they sat watching the sun sink beyond the hills, "I am glad I know you. I am glad to see where part of me comes from. But you must understand, I already had a father. The man who raised me shaped the woman I am. You are my blood, but he is my roots." Malik's face grew somber, but he nodded. "I understand. I will not try to take his place. All I ask is a chance to know you, to walk beside you in the years still left to me." Her heart softened. "That is enough. I want that too." When she returned home, her stepfather, her papa, as she still called him, waited by the doorway. He had been quiet since the truth came out, giving her space, but she could see the question in his eyes. "Do you still see me as your daughter?" Amina crossed to him and embraced him tightly. "You raised me," she said fiercely. "You taught me how to be strong, how to be kind. Nothing changes that. You are my father as much as anyone could ever be." The man's shoulders shook as he held her. "Then I am at peace." That embrace, more than anything, taught Amina what family truly meant. Blood alone did not define it. Love, sacrifice, and presence did. In the following months, she grew into her new sense of self. She no longer felt the need to hide her resemblance to Malik, nor did she let the village gossip wound her. When people asked, she spoke openly. "Yes, I have two fathers. One gave me life. One gave me love. Both are part of me." The honesty disarmed most, and gradually the whispers quieted. People began to admire her courage instead of questioning her origins. More importantly, Amina found peace within herself. She was not broken, not defined by secrets or shame. She was whole, carrying her mother's love, her stepfather's steady guidance, and Malik's restless spirit. She was a weaving of all three. One bright morning, as she watched children play by the riverbank, Amina smiled. She thought of her own future, one where she might raise children not bound by silence or fear, but by truth and openness. She had walked through betrayal, through doubt, through loss. And now she stood in a place of strength, ready to live her life on her own terms. Family, she realized, was more than blood. It was the people who chose you, who stayed when life grew heavy, who gave you love without measure. And she, after so much searching, finally knew who she was and where she belonged.